Alright, so what we're doing is we are going to ask the user to enter an input, and we're practicing for loops, and we want our first for loop to go from 1 to the number that the user inputted and display that. Input incremented by 1 each time that for loop runs. And then, then we're going to want to use a while loop to count down from the user's input number. And so it looks like in the example that they give us, the user inputs 5 and it counts from 1 to 5, and then it goes from 5 to 1. Alright, so one thing that I went ahead and checked out, it is, let's see, hold on. Okay, and so I learned about this range function for Python loops, and so I was having some difficulties on the counting down and how to do that, but we might not need to do that because we're going to be using a while loop, and so you'll see me probably check that out to make sure I know how to use it. And so for this range function, the syntax seems to be that we can have 3 parameters, and the first parameter is going to be the start. The second parameter is, well, what do we want it to increment to? And then the third parameter will be, well, how much do we want to increase each time? Usually we see it by 1, but this would be by 3. And so in this example, what would happen, it would start at 2, then it'd be plus 3, so then it would go to 5, and then the next loop would be plus 3, and then be 8, and it would continually increase by 3 until it hits the 30. And so let's go ahead and start writing. Okay, so I don't know about this Python IDE. I think last time I was able to use I think it was Python 2 syntax. I'm not sure if that changed, but because I think I used raw input, but I might not be able to use that this time, and I don't know if it's because this Python IDE updated from yesterday, and I'm now doing it in Python 3. I don't think so, but we'll find out. And so I know that I'm going to need so I need to use, I need to get input from the user, and I'll save that as, num or number, and I'm going to set that equal to input. I'm going to say, please enter number. Let's see, is it specific? We enter a number to count to. Alright, so we'll do that. We'll keep it the same. Enter a number to count to. I'm going to have a space right here just so I can make it look nice. So let's run that. Okay, please enter a number to count to. Perfect, okay. So that runs. I like that. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to do for. I'm going to do I for iteration. You could use whatever you wanted. For num in range, because we're using that range function. And so the first one would be start, stop, and then count by. And so we can have a total of 3 parameters to use, but we at least have to have 1. And so start, let's see, I think it'll start by 1 either way. Stop, well, I want it to stop at the number that the user inputted, and I set that variable to num. And count by, I could do 1. A lot of this is redundant, and I don't have to have all that, but I can. Print I plus 1. So I'm going to run that. Let's see, so 5. Alright, for Python. String object cannot be interpreted as an integer. Okay, so that 5 is acting as a string, and so the confusion that the computer has might be best put like something like this. Is that, well, how many eggs do you want from the store? And then you say potato. And it's like, well, that's not a number. that's a word, and so I don't like that. And so it's treating that 5 as a word, and so it's like so yeah, so it's just not making sense on the computer's end. And then like just thinking about it linguistically, there's just a disconnect there, because you could also do, it's like, well, what do you want from the store? And if I said 5, it's like, well, 5 of what? And so the computer's just having some, the computer doesn't know that I want this as that this input is a number, because right now it's saying, well, it's like the letter 5, and not the number 5. And so I'm putting the int there, and I'm putting the input, or excuse me, the integer of my input. So I'm changing that letter 5 to the number 5. And so when I rerun this should work. Let's see. And so I think because I have this 1 here, I actually don't need this plus 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see. I think I'm making this more difficult than it needs to be. At 5, but it works. And so I'll simplify it down. And so it's starting at 1. It's gonna run. Let's see. To 5, and it's gonna increase by 1. And so if I remove this, and I retry it, 5, it's going to start at 1, and then it's going to go to, then the next iteration will be 2. Let's see. Okay, so it's going to start at 1. I'm at 0 iterations right now. And so the next iteration will go to 2, and that's my first iteration. The next one, 3, second, then it's going to go to 4, that's my third iteration, and then it's going to go to 5. And I think just the way that it evaluates it, it's not going to print out this, because I think because it's starting at 1, it's really treating this as 6. I think really we could do just num. Run it. And so it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, because it's starting at 0. And so what I can do on this print end is just add 1 right here, because if I incremented each one of these numbers by 1, it would be exactly what we want. And I think that's the most simple way to go about it. And then it's going to be, the next part is going to be using a while loop to count down from the user's input. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here. I'm going to learn about while loops. And so this looks pretty common. So I'm just trying to think. Okay, so while let's see, I'll use x is, let's see, while x is less than 0. Can I do that? Will this make sense? Print print x minus 1. I do not think this will work. Okay, well, let's see. Okay, so while x, and so I think that, or what I'm thinking here is that, well, I need my x to increment downwards. So while x is less than 0, print, let's see, I'm pretty sure this will just be, like 4 repeated. Let's see, x, what if we set this to num? And so now this x is going to equal 5. And so while 5 is less than 0, let's see, well, 5 is going to be greater than 0, because, well, while 5 is less than 0, well, that's always going to be true. Or excuse me, that's always going to be false. And so because this operation will always evaluate to false, this will never run. And so well, my x is greater than 0, and my x is going to equal 5. Well, 5 is greater than 0, or excuse me, well, x is greater than 0, so this first iteration will be 5. Print, let's see, what we want is print num, and then num equals num minus 1. And then I think I need this in parentheses. Alright, count 5. Oh. So what I have here is that this condition will never evaluate to false. So I'm going to stop that. And so that is a loop that's going to go on for forever. And I do not want that. And so why is this evaluating? Oh, I think it's because I'm using x. Okay. So I should use x for everywhere else because I've set that x equal to 5, and then I never change that x value. And so every time that this loops, it's going to say, well, 5 is greater than 0, and then it's going to do everything else with num. And so that's always going to be evaluating the true because I never changed the value of x to begin with. What I had here was nums. And so when we rerun this, stop. Run. Ooh. 5. Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is working the way that we want it to. And so, once again, I put my x equal to num, and the only reason for that is because, in case I want to use this num later, I just don't want to manipulate the original input that the user had. I think I could just do this num, print num, num, and num. And that should satisfy everything. But now my original user input is going to be manipulated and changed. It's now going to equal 1, or it's going to equal 0 because at the end of this, num is going to be equal to 0. This statement's no longer true. This while loop then will end, and then nothing happens. That's the end of the program. And so could run it like that. That might be what they want you to do because you don't use num anywhere else in this. So it works. It's fine. I think the last thing we want is maybe print. Because what I see here is now we will count down. Now, we will count down. Perfect. And so let's do it with 10 this time. And so 10, 1 to 10. Now we'll count down 10 to 1. And so this while loop reads as, while this condition is true, perform this function. This for loop is, well, for as long as I is true, do this function. And so yeah, that's it.